Earlier this year, a group of progressive Jewish voices formed the Jewish Council of Australia to collectively voice their support for Palestinians and their condemnation of the State of Israel. Sarah Schwartz is a human rights lawyer and one of JCA's founders. She joins us now from Melbourne. Very good morning to you, Sarah.
Good morning, Fazia.
Sarah, you're also featured in tonight's episode as well. And I want to quote something that you said. You said it's important to highlight that the Jewish community is not a monolith and that there are many Jews who are critical of Israel and its military actions. Why is it important to you that that needs to be acknowledged?
Well, I think we hear a lot in public discourse and from, Israel and its lobby that Jews are monolithic, that we all support the state of Israel in this moment. And, I think that that's incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous to paint all Jews as supportive of Israel. It breeds racism and it stifles dissent. It's just ludicrous to think that all Jews would agree on anything. There's a saying, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And while the lobby might claim that Jews have the same unwavering commitment to Israel, rather, this has been a watershed moment for many Jewish people here in Australia and around the world who are speaking out against Israel's violence in their thousands, and many of them for the first time. Wherever we see Palestinian solidarity events, we're going to see Jewish people too. At almost every student encampment that exists now around the country, there are Jewish protesters standing proudly side by side with Palestinians.
So
only last week.
Apologies, Sarah. Just for those of us who don't understand the nuances of this, and it's a very complex issue, obviously, but do clarify your stance, the JCA's stance. You oppose the Israeli government's military operation in Gaza, but you support the right for Israel to exist in a safe environment.
We absolutely condemn and strongly are against what Israel is doing and the devastation that Israel is wreaking on the people in Gaza. We all have different views, but we are united in saying that the status quo in Israel cannot continue as it is. We cannot accept a state which prioritizes the rights of Jewish people over the rights of Palestinians. And we all agree that we need to see freedom, equality, and justice for Palestinians and Israelis.
How do you achieve that when you do have a group that exists in Hamas that has in their charter the pledge to destroy Israel?
Well, look, I'm not an expert on politics in that region, and we aren't supporters of Hamas. But what we've seen in this current moment is Israel inflicting tremendous violence and harm and devastation on Palestinians. And that's in Gaza, in the West Bank. We've seen settler-led, government-endorsed attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank that are ramping up. We've seen the recent uncovering of mass graves in Gaza. And now the Israeli government threatens to have a ground invasion in Rafah. We just cannot accept, and Australia cannot accept, that one of our allies is about to commit and is committing these atrocities. And so the greatest threat to any form of peace in this moment is Israel's continued oppression and violence against Palestinians. And that is why so many people, including Jewish people, are standing up and saying, not in our names.
Sarah, I wonder whether this must be a very challenging position for you and many who think like you. You're proud of your Jewish heritage, but you're facing criticism for opposing the Israeli war in Gaza from your own Jewish community as well. Is it difficult to differentiate, religion and identity to political views, especially when both are entwined in this and entrenched in this Middle East conflict?
Well, one real challenge here is that Israel and its lobby have done a really good job of painting this as a religious conflict, of painting Jewish identity as being inextricably linked from Israel. But we know, and I know, that Jewish identities and histories and cultures are diverse. They go back thousands of years, well before the state of Israel. And Jews have always had diverse views on Israel and Zionism. But the lobby strategically uses this conflation of Jewishness and Israel to silence vital critique and dissent. And we see it now when almost every act of solidarity with Palestinian people is deemed to be anti-Semitic. And that's false, and it shuts down debate. And the truth is that this is a conflict about people's homes, about violence, about land. And these atrocities continue, and treating this as a religious conflict is a convenient way of ignoring the political reality.
Sarah, we're seeing many younger people weighing in on the Middle East conflict. We're seeing rallies across the globe. We're seeing university protests, far more now than we have in the past few decades or so. I wonder if that thinking when it comes to the state of Israel is changing and evolving the further we get away from the Holocaust generation.
Well, Fawzia, I think that, unlike in previous generations, it's really impossible for anyone, in my generation, generations below me, to ignore the evidence of Israel's systemic oppression of Palestinians. I'm in my 30s. For most of my adult life, Israel has only had extremist governments, and it's becoming more and more brutal in its treatment of Palestinians with the expansion of settlements and this enforcement of differential treatment between Jews and Palestinians. And so I think that, for many Jewish people, this myth that Israel's actions and that its violence makes us safer is really crumbling. We know that we can't create safety by stifling another people's cries for freedom and equality. And, it's not good for Palestinians who face the brunt of this brutal violence. It's also not good for Israelis, and it's certainly not good for Jews around the world to be associated with such a violent regime. So, yes, I really hope that this, now creates space for people to rethink what safety looks like. And unfortunately, it seems like real peace is only going to come from outside pressure, which is why so many people are rising up. We can see that Israel doesn't respond to mere requests for a ceasefire. We need to have, we need to put in place measures that we would put in place against any pariah state that is committing these atrocities. And that includes sanctions, cutting military and diplomatic ties, and showing that there's a real cost to committing these types of war crimes.
Sarah, it's great talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on Weekend Breakfast. Sarah Schwartz there.
Thank you, Fawzia.